Hey, good morning, folks. It's Pastor Stephen back again with another No Frills daily devotional. And today's topic is Know Your Lure. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a minute, but I've been talking about this idea of sin cycles. And yes, that is a buzzword that you are going to hear coming out of my mouth many times. I apologize for that. Actually, I don't apologize for that because these are tough topics, and I want you to understand these tough topics, okay? Which is why I tend to repeat myself, and I apologize though, because I do tend to repeat myself a lot, but hopefully it helps you to understand these concepts, all right? And so this idea of know your lure comes from what I was reading yesterday, and go ahead and feel free to go back and check out that episode called The Temptation of Slavery. But I was thinking about that passage that I was reading from Isaiah 36 and how the commander of the Syrian army is trying to lure the Israelites out of the city, and he's tempting them with land, but he's also tempting them with bread and wine, right? Those are the things that he is tempting them with. And it's really important to understand why he's using those lures to try to get them out of the city right now, because the city has been under siege, okay? And so because the city has been under siege, right, they don't have access to food. They don't have access to wine. He tempts them with cisterns for water. They don't have access to fresh water right now because they've stopped up the stream that leads into Jerusalem at this time. And they don't have the freedom to go about out in the countryside. And so he's promising them with land, okay? And so on the surface, it seems like these lures are something that they should bite into. And on the surface, it seems like these are the lures targeted at what they're lacking right now. But ultimately, what's beneath the surface is this lure of self-reliance that the Assyrian commander is using. He knows that the Israelites struggle with trusting God. And so he, being a good enemy, knows what to try to tempt them with. And so he uses things like bread, wine, cisterns, and land. But really what he's targeting is their desire for self-reliance, right? And so I was thinking about that concept, and I was thinking about it's important for you and I to know our lures, okay? My grandpa Lawrence was an avid fisherman. Okay. And when he passed away, one of the things that I got from him, or my family got from him, was his tackle box. And it was all full of all these lures. And good fishermen know which lure to use. Okay. They know that there's a lot of things that play into which lure to use. Things like location, things like the depth of the water, things like the activities of the fish right now, things like the time of the day. And the reason that they know which lure to use is because fish habits are repeatable, and because they're repeatable, they are predictable. Okay? Right? Fish habits are repeatable and therefore they're predictable. And guess what? Sin habits in your life and in my life are repeatable, and therefore they are predictable. And so it's important for you and I to know which lure gets us sucked into that sin cycle again and again and again. Okay? And that's what I want to focus on today, is which lure is drawing you in. That's a question that I need to ask myself, and that's a question that I want you to ask yourself, because we find ourselves on these loops of sin habits where I said I was never going to do this again, but here I am, sucked back into the cycle again. And so it's important for us to know which lure has got us drawing in. And so we need to identify it, okay? We got to identify that lure. We have to, so that we can learn to recognize that lure, see it for what it really is, so that in the future we can resist that lure, where we don't take the bait and we don't find ourselves back on that cycle again. So we got to identify it. We got to learn to recognize it so that we can in the future resist it. Okay. And that's what I want to talk about, because I don't want you to take the bait, and I don't want myself to take the bait anymore. Okay. And so I want to expose the roots. But here's the deal. when I talk about these potential lures that you might have in your life or that I might have in my life, it's not what you think it might be. Okay? So hold on just for a second, because it's not just money, sex, power, drugs, and alcohol that suck us in. Okay? Because those things that I just listed are fillers. Those are fillers of what I call felt needs or felt desires that we have within us, where we look to those things to satisfy a felt need or a felt desire. So what we got to do actually is go beneath the surface of those things and find out, what are we looking to? Like, why are we looking to money? Why are we looking to sex? Why are we looking to drugs? And why are we looking to alcohol? There's something beneath the surface in my life that's causing me to desire those things, right? And it's not just those things, it's many things. But so we got to go to the root, because think about the story that I started with the Israelites, right? On the surface, it seems like he's tempting them, right, with food and cisterns and all that stuff. But here's the deal. The root for the Israelites was the sin of self-reliance. Self-reliance can be a root where I think I don't need God. I can do this on my own. Loneliness is a lure that can suck us in, where we look to things like sex or alcohol or drugs, right? Rejection is a lure. Self-pity is a lure. Jealousy is a lure. Anger is a lure. Fear is a lure. Insecurity is a lure. And so when you find yourself getting sucked into that sin cycle, I want to encourage you to stop and think about, what is the root here? Expose that root. And maybe it's a question that you have with Holy Spirit, and say, Holy Spirit, help me to figure out what the real root is that's got me sucked into this sin cycle again, so that you can expose it, right? So that you can identify it, so that you can learn to recognize it, so that you can resist it in the future. Now, I want to take you to a text today, and that list of lures isn't comprehensive. There is way more lures than just that, but I'm going to encourage you to go beneath the surface in your heart and in your life to figure out what's sucking you in again. All right, I'm going to leave you with this passage. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And Paul is talking to this church in Corinth, and he's telling them about history. He's giving them a brief discourse on the history of the Israelites, okay, of their time in Egypt and how they found themselves sucked into cycles again and then again and again and again. And he says this is verse 11. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the fulfillment of the ages has come. So if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. Be careful here. Know what your lure is. Know what the enemy is going to try to use against you. This is verse 13. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out for you so that you can stand up under it. And so in this process of trying to figure out what is luring me in, I need to look to God. I need to trust in him, and I need to have him help me to expose that root, so that through him I can identify it, so that through him I can learn to recognize it, and so ultimately through him I can learn to resist it. Hey, you guys, have an awesome day and be blessed.